All right, Heart Talkers, welcome into another episode of Heart Talk, where we have everyday conversations with everyday people through both the hard and hope-filled seasons of life. And joining me today from Pickering, Ontario, right? Pickering?
Yep.
Yeah, is Mr. Sam Demma. And I could not be more excited. I was like actually a little bit nervous for this, Sam. You
Oh,
are doing some phenomenal work in the youth mental health space. I'm in admiration. You're so inspiring. Can't wait to dig in here and have you share your story. So, welcome to the Heart Talk podcast.
uh, can you just clarify for the listeners? I didn't pay you to say those things.
Oh my God. I, you know,
I'm I'm honored to be here.
Prior to hopping on, I just went on to your Instagram and I got teared up watching the video that you shared about your grandmother. The beautiful thing you did to kind of raise her spirits and lift her up when she was going through a bit of a tough time. And as I watch you and I see what you're doing with youth all across the globe, like that's what you're doing. You're like the biggest cheerleader for them. So let's get right into it. Tell us, who is Sam Demma?
Sam Demma is a brother, a son, a grandson, an athlete, a performer. Um, I have many roles, but I use all my time today to create experiences that move people emotionally, whether that's on stage through my work speaking at schools, conferences, and events, or off stage creating books, videos, and other products and other projects. Um, I hope that people will remember Sam Demma as someone who served others and helped other people believe in themselves more deeply. Um, those are some of the ideas that come to mind when people ask me who I am.
I love that because you can tell from that answer how much of a like heart-driven leader you are. And I mean, like, how old are you, sir?
You're gonna ask me to give away my age, Laura?
Because you speak like you have spent decades on this planet, like decades, and you speak with such wisdom. But you're in your 20s, yeah?
Yeah, but when I first started speaking, I was 17, and that question brought me the most anxiety because I feared people would make the decision to not bring me in because of my age. Now I've been doing it for 6 years, so audience, you can do the math. I'm 24 now, and
Wow.
I love I love the fact that I am still in my 20s because it creates this opportunity where for students it's relatable like an older brother, and for teachers
Mm.
it's relatable like I'm almost a student that's in their classroom. So for both the audiences I serve, I feel like I'm the most useful right now, so hurry up because I'm getting gray hairs, people.
I love that. I think that there is something so powerful to that um having that representation with youth of a younger face. I mean, I've been speaking, I told you prior to hopping on here, I've been speaking to kids, for
Yeah.
20 years. And, I think I look quite youthful, but, there's a difference between, having somebody in the room with them who's not so far out from the experiences that they've been experiencing. So what brought you to speaking? Let's go back to like, how did you get here?
Completely by accident, and then fell in love with it in the process. Growing up, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I pursued that dream very seriously. By the time I was a senior in high school, there was a full ride scholarship opportunity to go to a Division I university in the States. Long story short, I had three major knee injuries, two surgeries, lost the full ride scholarship opportunity, spent 2.5 years struggling to get back on the pitch before making the decision to stop playing soccer. And it was one of the most challenging decisions I had ever made up until that point in my life. My entire self-worth as a human being was tied to my identity as an athlete. Without
Mhm.
soccer, I felt like there was no value I could bring the world. I had very supportive family, which helped me through that difficult transition. But in addition to my parents and my sister, I had a teacher named Michael Loudfoot who just spoke life into me in his classroom. And I don't even think he realized how much of an impact he was creating. But he said things like, Sam, your hard work is not a waste because it's building your personality and your character. And those are things that will stick with you no matter what you pursue. He said, soccer is just one single game, but life is filled with thousands. Any point in time, you can start playing a new one. And he taught this lesson in class about small, consistent actions making a big impact. He actually grabbed a piece of chalk and wrote names on the blackboard of people who had changed the world. Recently, I, I did a performance and a student said, Sam, what's chalk?
Gosh.
I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, we're there. We're there, Sam.
And yeah, he wrote these names on the board and challenged us to figure out what they had in common. And he proposed that they all took thousands of small, consistent actions and then challenged us to go in the community, take a small action to see if we too can make a difference. Walking home from school, I saw a piece of garbage on the sidewalk. 2 weeks after that day in class, I made the decision that my first small, consistent action would be picking up litter walking home from high school. That action led to a friend seeing me while driving home from school, pulling over, asking me what in the world I was doing. I explained to him what my teacher taught me. Together, we started an organization where we would volunteer for 1 hour once a week to pick up litter in our community. And in the first 2 months, we gained so much support and momentum that we never stopped the project. It actually continued for 6 years. And the one thing we needed more than anything else was people's hands, volunteers. So I went into my principal's office. At the time, I was still in high school. I said, Mr. O'Neill, Mr. O'Brien, uh, can I please have 5 minutes at the end of a Thanksgiving or a monthly assembly just to recruit our students? It'll be great because they can earn volunteer hours and we need more people helping out. He said, sure, you can have 5 minutes. I did my first ever performance. It was terrible, Laura. Absolutely terrible. Though I remember walking off the stage feeling like I was doing the thing I was supposed to be doing in that moment. And over the next 12 months, I did about 30 to 40 voluntary presentations in schools solely with the purpose of recruiting volunteers until I had a principal hand me an honorarium. It must have been $50. And I started doing the math, right? I'm like, 5 minutes, $50? I'm going to retire my parents, you know? And I just never looked at it as a pathway I could pursue until that specific moment in time. I went home, I searched youth speaker on Google, called everybody on the first 5 pages, asked them all these questions. And that's what really started my journey of performing and presenting and using storytelling as a way to move people emotionally.
Wow, what a remarkable story. And it's just a true testament to the power of impact that somebody can have on our lives and that teacher. Those are words you'll never forget. And one of my favorite things as a teacher, I mean, I've been out of the classroom now for, oh gosh, well over 13 years. But I'll still run into former students and they'll say, hey, I remember when you said, and I, in my old age, can't recall every single conversation, but I know that it was impactful for them. And I was in a school just a couple days ago. One of the teachers, after I was done speaking, invited me to come into their psychology class. And he was the kind of teacher that I think you're talking about. I mean, he just sat heart to heart with those kids, no textbooks, no, and just asked them questions, talked about life experience. And it really brought this like renewed sense of hope to me that like
Mm.
the teaching profession and the opportunity to lead kids from a place of heart-centered, just true desire to see them just go for it. And now look at you. So have you spoken to that teacher since? I mean, has he seen you speak on stage? Like, what do you
I developed a keynote titled One Teacher Away, which is all about this idea that every human being is one person away from totally changing their life, and invited him and his wife to sit in the audience the first time I delivered it.
Oh my gosh.
And they they bawled their eyes out, and I've stayed in touch with him and his wife Joan at least once every year or two. I have lunch on their porch. They live about a 45-minute drive from the house. And it's funny you mention forgetting some of the words you share with students because when I remind Mr. Loudfoot about what he said to me, he chuckles and says, I don't even remember teaching that lesson in class.
Right.
And it's just such a reminder to all the educators and caring adults that are listening to this. You're making a difference whether you realize it or not.
Hmm.
You're planting seeds every single day of which you might not see grow, but the seed has been planted. The job is done.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's I'm grateful that we've stayed in touch.
Yeah. And, I'm sure I get goosebumps just listening to this and just envisioning, what him and his wife would have been like in that audience, listening to how, those words just sent you in a completely, amazing trajectory for your life. So, okay. So you Google speaking, you start getting your name out there. And now all of a sudden, I mean, here you are 6 years later, you're a TEDx speaker, you're an author, you are traveling all over the world speaking. So what are the themes? Like what are you hoping to inspire kids and youth on when you speak?
My biggest goal is to help them realize that their own negative and limiting thoughts, along with the negative words and opinions from society or other people, don't have to define the way they see themselves and the choices they choose to make. I use an analogy about emptying your backpack and carry a giant 4 foot red backpack on my shoulders.
Mm,
It serves as a metaphor for all of our minds and the baggage we carry with our thoughts. Um, so if I can walk into a room and share stories that help other people empty some of those negative thoughts from their backpack, that's really the mission and the goal whenever I'm delivering a program or presentation. Because I think our psychology and our thoughts lead to every other outcome in our lives.
hmm.
Um, Now that's my goal, but it's funny because every time I deliver a session, different people take away different things. I can't tell you how many times a staff member or a faculty member has approached me after the presentation and whispered, saying, Sam, I think I needed to hear this more than the kids did. And
Wow.
it's like, well, yeah, because we're all human beings and we
Hmm.
all go through things. And when someone shares a well told story, we all sit in the audience and connect the dots with the events that are unfolding in our own lives
Yeah.
and compare them to what the speaker is sharing. And so I really think that a well told, authentic, delivered story has the ability to connect with all. And it's funny, sometimes I get in my head and I think about um, the techniques and the delivery and the technology. And I have a mentor and he always reminds me, he's like, the sole goal is to impact the people sitting in front of you, to move the
Hmm.
people emotionally sitting in front of you. And I just always go back to that.
Yeah, because if you have their hearts, you have their ears, and the true authentic story and passion just far supersedes any technology or any, lights and bells and whistles. I mean, I know that as a speaker. And I think what I really love too about when you can sit in the audience and listen to somebody speak so passionately about something, it's like you lose yourself in your
Yeah.
own story, and someone who's really good at delivering that, you don't even really hear their story. You're experiencing your own
Your own.
story through their words. Yeah.
Yeah, it's why we sit down to watch a Disney movie and we all bawl our eyes out. Whether it's made for kids or adults or anybody, we all identify with our own personal life experiences and
Yeah.
it moves us, right?
Yeah, I've had grandparents reach out to me that have read my children's books to their
Oh,
grandkids and have said like, I cried reading that book
oh,
because exactly what you said. This is a human experience, and no matter our age or stage of life, we experience life from an emotional perspective. Right. And I want to go back to what you said at the beginning when you talked about losing that identity as a soccer player, because I really relate to that when I decided to step out of my teaching career after,
mm,
painful pivot in my life. I went through a separation, divorce, and things spilled over into my career, and I needed to step away. That I write in my book was harder for me, I feel, even than the loss of the relationship, because that was who I was. Like I poured my soul into teaching. And I think people listening, no matter their age, will identify with that as well, because we all go through these transitions in life where all of a sudden we aren't who we were. when
Mm.
we attach our identities to certain things. So what did you do to help you really step through those days of grief, of losing Sam as the soccer player?
Said yes to as many new experiences as possible. I went from a insane soccer schedule where every day I'd finish school, get in the car, drive an hour to practice, practice 2 hours, drive an hour home, eat dinner, do homework, go to sleep. Like it filled my entire schedule, including weekends when we
Mm,
travel for tournaments. So I went from packed schedule to wide open schedule. And it was in those moments of time where I had nothing planned where I struggled the most. So I made a commitment to say yes to as many new things as possible. I joined Toastmasters, a public speaking group. I joined CAPS, a speaking association. I started volunteering as much as I could. Uh, Played sports with friends outside of soccer to just get out the house. It was losing myself in the service of others and activities that helped me heal from the experience of losing my identity as an athlete. I also believe building skill in a new activity helped me remind myself that yes, I could do other things. I think that sometimes we love the work we do when we feel like we're good at it, but
mm.
to become good at something, we have to suck at it for a long period of time.
I love
So,
that.
so I just made a commitment that I'm going to learn how to do something new. And as I got better at speaking and performing, my self-worth around not being an athlete started to shift, and I felt okay in my new evolution. Um, I'd say, yeah, I was getting involved in activities, losing myself in the service of others, and then making the decision to build a new skill that helped me the most during that transition.
Oh, I love that. Say yes to as many things as you can and surround yourself with community.
Yeah.
You get that connection, that community. And I think so many of us, when we go through the hard season of life, innately and intuitively, because it's hard and it's painful, we turn inward. And sometimes when we turn inward, then we shut out what's going outside. And when we lose connection, we lose community. That's when things start to feel darker and darker. So I love that. Push to say yes to as many things as you can and to try something new. So, you have spoken all over the country and internationally too.
I've spoken in all the provinces in Canada, almost, not the Northwest Territories, and soon maybe.
Yeah.
Spoken in multiple states in the US, and this summer the tour is going to Kenya in Africa, which I'm super excited about.
What? Kenya, how does that happen? Tell me.
4 or 5 years ago, a young man named Brian Nambago reached out over email after watching my TEDx talk titled Small Consistent Actions, letting me know he loved the speech and it inspired him to start his own small acts of kindness in his local community in Nairobi. We stayed in touch. A year or two later, he emailed me a PDF copy of his book and he said, please read page 82. And on page 82 was a list of his mentors, one of which was Sam Demma. And I was like completely blown away. We had barely talked. I felt humbled and honored. And from that moment forward, we shared many interactions over social media and stayed in touch, had phone calls every once in a while. And then more recently, over the past year or two, he's been consistently poking me and inviting me to bring my message and platform to Kenya because he believes schools would love it. And every time I would politely tell him I'm too busy and decline the offer. And I had a really busy year last year. I burnt myself out to some degree, and something in my soul and heart just said, call Brian. And I followed that intuitive nudge, reached out to Brian. Hey, man, is Kenya still an opportunity? He's like, how many schools? And we set up a 33 school speaking tour across 7 counties in the country of Kenya. We will be there for 6 weeks. It is a completely voluntary project. I've put aside some funds to cover the expenses, and I'm so excited about learning about a new culture, going there with an open mind and just a heart and hands that are ready to serve. And I have no idea what the experience is going to be like. I'm just open and excited.
It's going to be life changing. Hey,
Yeah.
like it is going to be one of those experiences that is going to be unforgettable for you. I love this full circle story of how you had the teacher, he sat in the audience, listened to how you were inspired by him. And then you became the teacher for Brian, and you
Oh,
became the mentor. How incredible. And we just never know, like you said, when we plant seeds and we get the message out there who's listening and how impactful it's going to be in their life, you know?
even just thinking those three words my teacher taught me, small, consistent actions, became the premise and title of my TEDx talk that Brian watched. Without Mr. Loudfoot, there is no TEDx speech. There might not even be Sam, the presenter or performer. There definitely wouldn't have been Brian from Nairobi watching that video, reaching out, and then creating this opportunity to reach 30,000 students in a country halfway across the globe.
Right?
Like
Like,
it's immeasurable. I think the actions we take are seeds that we plant, and they're very hard to measure.
absolutely. Mr. Loudfoot would have never, I think, imagined the ripple effect that he's created. So tell me about some of the most um, memorable keynotes that you've delivered. I know you've delivered many, but tell me about a time where you really felt like it impacted a youth or you heard back from a youth after.
Yeah, I did a keynote. One that immediately comes to mind was for Fanshawe College. It was for 200 international undergraduate students working toward future careers. And we built a special keynote specifically for them. And the conference team, the day of the speech, like everything about that event felt magic. We gave away books afterwards, and there was a long line, and I had so many wonderful conversations with students working toward their future career goals and dreams. That is one event that sticks out in my mind. Another event we did was with a high school in Boissevain, Manitoba, and there was an interaction with a student that I'll never forget. Right before the performance, I was in the gym shooting basketballs, and a student was just sitting on the bench. And me and there was a team of three of us that were traveling together. We invited this student to play basketball with us, and we didn't exchange any words, but we just shot hoops together. And we did the presentation, and we were leaving the school, and we're literally pulling out the parking lot, and the same student runs out the building, and she stops us in the car, and we roll down our windows, and she says, "That was the first time I felt like I was a part of this community. Like no one in my life knows how much I struggle with anxiety and depression. I just want to say thank you so much for that invitation." And I just remember that moment as a reminder that sometimes it's not our words, it's not even our actions, it's just the invitation to give someone a piece of our time that could have such a big impact on their self-esteem and their well-being. Um, and so for that reason, that event really sticks out in my mind as one that I
Mm.
believe made a significant impact. And then the last one I'll share with you is in Winnipeg. We spoke at a youth detention center, and it was sponsored by a Kinsman group, kind of like Rotary.
Mm-hmm.
And we went into this facility, and the organizer let us know that typically people don't stop to deliver presentations here. They don't get many of these experiences. And after the performance ended, I toured the facility and some of the cells where students were staying. Um, and the smiles on the kids' faces. And I left wondering, did I actually make a difference for this group? Because the adversity I went through compared to the things that these young people were going through, like, come on, some knee injuries. Like, if you heard some of these student stories, it would blow your mind. And they scanned me like 20 to 30 PDF letters that students wrote after the performance. And I was almost in tears, Laura.
Oh, I bet.
That one really, really touched me. So I would say those are three shows that stick out in my mind. Um, to any of my other past events listening, I loved your event too. Just know.
I love that people pleasing part. I love
Yeah.
y'all. But you're so right. I have those memories too of those impactful times where it was just the smallest gesture, the no verbal communication, no exchange, but just the pure presence and that heart to heart connection, so powerful. You made me cry there, Mr. Sam.
The heart talk.
Heart talk. Oh, so listen, anyone listening today who's going through one of those hard seasons of life, whether they be a youth or they be a parent or a grandparent listening, what do you have for them? What do you want to say?
You don't have to carry the weight of your backpack alone. Please don't stop yourself from reaching out to a connection, someone in your community who you can share the struggle with so they can help you carry those challenges forward. Um, secondly, I would say this too shall pass. There's no storm in history that's lasted forever. So keep showing up for yourself because oftentimes on the other side of those big challenges are massive growth opportunities or beautiful experiences. And if we
Mhm.
stop showing up, we rob ourselves of the ability to figure out and discover what that treasure is. And thirdly, I know most of my challenges come not actually from the challenge themselves, but how I'm choosing to perceive the challenge. So
Yeah.
ask yourself, what are you choosing to believe about the current situation? There's probably many things you can't control, but the one thing we can is our perspective. Um, I just saw recently on the news that Jeremy, I can't remember his last name. He's a movie star in the Avengers, and he played the Arrow Man, I can't even remember the superhero's name, but he shoots bow and arrow in the
Hmm.
Avengers. He's a well-known actor, and 2 years ago he got run over by a 16,000-ton snow plow and broke 2 dozen bones in his body. Had to relearn how to walk, and he's now running again. People told him he had never
Wow.
walk, never run, and when he was interviewed on breakfast television this past week, or sorry, the person who wrote the film was interviewed talking about Jeremy. He said, just Jeremy just chose to believe that he was going to make it through and chose to believe that it was going to work out. And I think it just reminded me like perspective is so important.
Hmm. Yeah, I used to do a keynote called Change Your Lens. How if we
Mm,
can just change, you know how when you have a set of binoculars and you're really trying to like manipulate the focus, you can really
yeah,
focus in or you change the view because we all have the opportunity to do that, but we can't do that without community. We can't do that without those helpers, like you said, to help unload the backpack and help
yeah.
us sift and sort through some of the hard stuff. I think what's really cool, full circle moment for me, is when I first heard your story and you speak on Dr. Jody Carrington's podcast, and I heard you talk about the backpack. I know I reached out to you and I said, "Oh my gosh, our team at Youth Matter does something similar. We bring two little backpacks, not a great big gigantic,
Yeah.
red one that's incredible that you have, but we bring two and we put a light one and a heavy one. The kids don't know which one's light or heavy, and we
Mm,
always invite two volunteers to come up and choose which backpack they're going to put on their back. And then we talk about that exactly. If we don't unload it, if we don't unpack it, if we don't find the skills, the tools, the people, and that is a message that transcends all ages. Because I think also the older we get, sometimes we tend to carry things like shame and embarrassment and pride, and then we don't need the help. You know, we don't need the help. We can do it. We should be able to handle it. We should be able to handle it. So I love that message. So your book, tell me a little bit about your book.
absolutely. Empty Your Backpack is my baby.
Yeah.
I I know you know the feeling because you've released multiple. Um, It was 2022 that I wrote it. It was inspired by a student who was struggling with their mental health. And I asked myself after having a conversation with them, I wonder how long this person has been carrying around these thoughts and these beliefs and these stories. Because they told me that most of their challenges were due to the words other people were using to describe them
Mm-hmm.
and some verbal bullying at school. And at the time, I had already been speaking for about 4 years, and I was planning and I already started writing a book called Dear High School Me. And it was going to be advice and insights from someone who's not far removed from high school. And based on that experience with this student, I shifted the book to be all about letting go of negative thoughts. And when I thought about letting go, the idea of a backpack came to mind because students carry those. And so I titled the book Empty Your Backpack, and I sat in Starbucks 3 to 4 times a week. Shout out Starbucks, whose drinks I can't pronounce.
And who is
uh,
not sponsoring this episode, but still we'll give them a
yes.
shout out.
um, and I just wrote. and I then hired a team to help me crystallize some of the thoughts and ideas. And the book is a resource. It's split into two parts. The first six chapters are all about beliefs and mindset shifts to empty the backpack, and the second six chapters are all about actions that could move
I
young
love that.
people or anybody closer to their dreams and goals. Um, you can find it anywhere books are purchased, or you can even message me and I'll sign and send a copy to you. I would love to do that.
Oh, I love it. And I'm going to share that in the show notes. And I'm going to purchase some copies to send out in our mental health happy mail that we do with our youth, and some giveaways, because it's funny. My son said to me once, "Why don't you write a book for kids my age?" I'm like, "Because that's hard.
That's
That's
awesome.
hard to write a book for teens, maybe." So yeah, I can't wait to check that out. You are maybe one of the most inspiring, kids I think I've ever met.
Aw.
And I call you a kid because I mean I'm 20 years older than you, but
I appreciate it.
I think that what I really love most about what you said too is that you are vulnerable enough to say that you also sometimes sit in the self-doubt, and you also sometimes think, am I doing enough? I had that happen this past week, because when you do work in the niche of mental wellness for youth, it's hard on the heart when you see what these kids are going through. Never before, and I said this to the kids I talked to this week, never has it been harder to be a kid. Never have
Mm,
the pressures and the influences been more intense. And I think that they have an uphill battle, and having inspiring role models like yourself, who no matter where you come from, what your background is, you can resonate with your story of inspiration. I love how you said when you went into that detention center, thinking, gosh, how are they going to relate? I'm a kid who had some injuries, but pain is pain. I once read this book. Have you ever read the book by Dr. Edith Edgar called The Choice?
no.
Oh my gosh, Sam, I highly recommend it. My husband and I read
Mm,
it a couple of years ago. She's one of the last remaining survivors of Auschwitz. She's a psychologist in the
wow.
States. And she wrote this book, I think, when she was 91. And she
Wow.
talks about that scale of rating one's pain and saying, like, listen, pain's pain. If we can love, we can have pain. And then what do we do to get through that onto the other side? So, when are you heading to Kenya?
Thanks for the book recommendation. I'll definitely be taking a peek.
Oh, it's a good one.
Kenya, Kenya is July 11th until roughly August 15th. And then from the 15th until the 25th, one of the friends I'm bringing with me grew up in Tanzania. His family has insisted that we stay with them for an extra 10 days without any work just to enjoy and tour and experience the local culture. So January 11th, sorry, July 11th until roughly August 25th is the trip.
Oh gosh, what an adventure. I can't wait to kind of follow the adventure, as you share it. So as we wrap up here, I would love to know, you already mentioned the teacher, Mr. Broadfoot is
Mr.
his name?
Loudfoot, yes. Yeah.
Loudfoot. Broadfoot. Oh my gosh. Loudfoot.
Both big feet. It's okay.
Both big feet. Have there been other role models in your life that have really just helped you on your path?
My grandfather, all of my grandparents, but very specifically my grandfather on the Italian side, his name is also Sam. We shared the same name. He taught me what it means to work hard and be a good human being through his actions. Um, I've had many professional mentors,
Mm.
one of whom's name is Chris. Chris totally changed the trajectory of my life 3 years ago. I have another mentor named Cody and Sean, and um, there's just too many to list.
Mm.
And I always remind myself when people reach out who I can serve. I remind myself of all the people who have helped me and how it's a responsibility to give back and make the time for people. And yeah, there's just too many to count. But I would say my grandfather, Chris, Cody, Sean, a gentleman named Adam, Stefan, Dan, like it goes on and on.
Wow, I love that, a responsibility to give back, and you certainly are doing that. I mean, when I invited you to hop on, you didn't even hesitate, and that doesn't always happen. I get some no's, and you're busy. You clearly this takes a lot from your own, mental and emotional wellness as well. I know what it is when you go out and you speak and you give your heart. So glad to hear that you're recharging and that you have this amazing adventure ahead of you. And I'm just so thankful. Where else can we find you?
I'm hard to miss. My backpack's pretty big. So look out your windowsill and I'll be there.
And you see
Um,
this giant red backpack.
yeah, I would say uh, my name, Sam Demma. If you search that on Google, you'll find everything. I'm easiest to reach on social media through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, um, or you can go on my website, samdemma.com, and inquire about booking a performance or email me through there as well.
Oh, I cannot wait to see what's ahead for you. I'm going to link all those in the show notes, including the TEDx talk and the link to your book. And thank you so much for sitting heart to heart with me today, Sam. Geez, I'm not going to forget this one.
Oh, thanks, Laura.
Take care.